Hello everybody, it's AJ back again, and you're with the Mighty Glue Stick channel, and another Monster Ecology video, as always. And today, I'm going to be covering the Werebear. Now, Werebears are right back at the start of D&D in the White Box set and the Blackmore series, and they've gone all the way through. And the 5th edition Werebears seem to be a blend of different things, but we're going to concentrate on the Forgotten Realms version. And Werebears are unlike other lycanthropes in D&D in that they are generally good, neutral good. They were lawful good for a time in earlier editions, but neutral good suits us just fine. That's generally good-hearted beings who are selective about who they turn into werebears. So when they're in combat, even when they're enraged in bear form, they select who they bite. They don't bite people at random, but they don't really need to. Their claws and other weapons are very powerful. They are one of the most powerful were creatures. They've got armor class of 10 in humanoid form, or if you're basing them on some other creature, they gain a +1 natural armor class, and their strength becomes 19 if it wasn't already, and their natural attack forms are based on the strength, of course. In beast form or hybrid form or bear form, they have an armor class of 11. And they've got 135 hit points. They've got a speed of 30 feet as a humanoid, or 40 feet in bear or hybrid form, so they can outrace and chase down most humanoids. They've got a climb speed of 30 feet, so they are very adept at climbing up trees or cliff faces or the side of buildings, castle fortifications, you name it. It's very hard to keep a bear out when it's after you. They've got a strength of 19, meaning they are easily the strongest of the werefolk. They've got a dexterity of 10, constitution of 17, intelligence of 11, wisdom of 12, and charisma of 12. So they've got their wits about them. They've got a perception +7, and they've got the usual damage immunities to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons that aren't silvered. So this is either magical weapons or silvered weapons. Are the only real things that can hurt them, as well as magical attacks, obviously. They've got passive perception of 17. They speak whatever language they spoke in their life before becoming a lycanthrope, or just common. And they can't speak in bear form, but you can say that they kind of have an empathy, a connection with other bears, and they can sort of speak bear language. They are shape changers, and they can use their action to polymorph into a large bear-shaped hybrid form, a bear humanoid form, or a large bear and back into its true form. And they can be any sort of bear, either a polar bear or a roller bear or a grizzly bear or black bears or Kodiak bears or any of the other. If you're just presenting them as a humanoid who's been selected by other werebears, generally they'll pick the biggest and strongest and most self-sufficient people in an area to carry on the lineage of being werebears. So they'll be the big lumberjack types, or the most sturdy, proficient folk, fairly hairy, and their hair will have the same sort of traits as whatever bear form they turn into. So it may be silvery for the polar bear, or shaggy and ginger for the grizzly bear. And they'll be large, and their size in bear form is enormous. They're medium humanoids who turn into basically a huge bear. And they've got a keen sense of smell, so they have their wisdom perception checks have advantage when they're making checks on scenting, smelling the ground, and they can track people by smell. And their equipment, of course, isn't transformed with it, because it's just their body which is transforming. So any equipment and things they have will be left behind if they transform fully into a bear. But generally speaking, they'll move around in hybrid shaped quite easily, and they can carry things around with them. They prefer to have big weapons, such as a great axe or a great sword or a great club, and they are strong enough to wield this thing in one hand. And they do a wicked chopping attack at +7 to hit, and one target will take 10 points of slashing damage with their great axe. Their claws in bear form, again +7 to hit, and they do 13 points of slashing damage. And their bite, which is the way that they transform others into a werebear, which they can only perform obviously in hybrid or bear form, is +7 to hit, and the target takes 15 points of piercing damage. And if it's a humanoid, and as mentioned in previous videos, comments thread, that could be any sort of humanoid, including a giant or an elf or a goblin, you name it. The target must succeed on a DC 14 Constitution saving throw or be cursed with Werebear lycanthropy. So that turns them into a werebear. Now, as for their ecology, their attitude, and things like that. Oh, by the way, also they make 2 claw attacks on their return, or 2 great axe attacks, or a claw and a great axe, or a bite. So the ecology of a werebear, they are protectors of the forest. In Forgotten Realms, quite often most werewolves in particular will worship Malar, but werebears may also worship Malar. But the way that they worship Malar takes very different forms. The werewolves, of course, will perform a wild hunt where they select a human who is their victim, and the victim's job is to get away from them. And if they manage to avoid being hunted and killed by the werewolves, then they will be gifted a boon, and the werewolves will do something very nice for them. Otherwise, of course, they become werewolf food. The werebears, on the other hand, they will worship or pay homage to Malar by hunting for a settlement. They will become the aspect of the hunter. They will become their winter protector that looks after a local community as long as that community is not doing any wrong by nature. So they will be protectors of the woodland realm that they inhabit, and this is partly a survival trait of the bear in that they don't tolerate anything which is going to disrupt their own food supply. So they need a healthy, thriving ecology in order to attract large game such as elk and moose and any other sort of creatures in the D&D area that the werebear will prey upon. And they need to eat pretty hearty because they have quite a metabolism. So a werebear will usually seclude itself somewhere quite remote where it's built a shelter for itself, and take your cue from Lord of the Rings and the werebear that was living in the borderlands between different areas in a great big sort of palatial log cabin with beehives and things like that built into the place, and a healthy supply of food and things stocked up in the larder, be it sausages or salted meat and things like that for his human form, or he'll just, change and go out and hunt whenever he needs to. But bears by their nature they like to go wandering and gathering. They're pretty curious creatures that will get into everything, and they have quite a wide range. So there's no reason why a werebear wouldn't travel quite extensively and have a regular sort of patrol around its large woodland realm. So if you're approaching a remote forest community that's thriving and hasn't had any attacks in a long time, is maybe a good chance that a werebear is in fact observing you arriving and leaving, and basically the villagers, it's in their best interest not to tell the murder hobos who arrived in town that they've actually got a werebear which is providing them with freshly killed elk every fortnight, and occasionally comes into town to buy implements and things, or sharpen its axe, or whatever, trade in things that it's found, and collect a bounty on goblin ears or some such thing. So the werebears, as I said, they're selective about who they turn into a werebear themselves, and they don't like to have a community of werebears. For them, really, it will just be them, a mate, or them and an apprentice, and they keep their family groups pretty tight-knit and small. However, they do tolerate each other when they're coming together for, say, a worshipping ceremony of Malar around a stone circle or some such, or when they're coming together to deal with one of them that is turned bad. And if you think of how legendarily bad an evil werebear would be, such as somebody who's been turned into a werebear against their will as a curse, particularly evil warlords and things like that who decide to take on the curse or force the curse of the werebear on themselves in order to give themselves power so that they can conquer and enslave and kill whoever they want to. Other werebears, of course, won't tolerate this and will hunt them down. For them, they want to make sure that this gift of Malar is protected, and only those who are worthy of it, of nature's power, have it. So when they transform, they turn into quite enormous creatures, but they maintain a little bit of their wherewithal when they do transform, and they do so quite often willingly. They're one of the more sort of onto it and civilized of were creatures. But they are not human, and they don't think like humans. They think like ravenous beasts which are just doing their thing. It just happens that their instincts and such coincide with their role as a protector, and their solitary nature quite often lends them from avoiding conflict. So you know that if there's a werebear around, you usually only have to worry about that one werebear. And if you learn that werebear's motivations and their location and things like that, you can learn to live with that creature. And I like to think that in the Dungeons and Dragons world, where you've got all sorts of things which may tear apart your farm at any minute, a werebear, I mean, really, it's not as monstrous as you'd think. It's sure something that could kill you, but it's not going to kill you without a good reason, typically. And the werebears want to maintain that good relation that they have with other creatures, so it's in their best interest to let everything just be mellow. They don't want to kill humans. They don't want humans trying to kill them. And so they will maintain the status quo, and they will take out members of their society which are problematic for them and also problematic for the creatures living in the woodland realm alongside them. And really the only real conflict they may have is, say you have a paladin or some such, or an elven community who's taking offence at the fact that there's two werebears now, where previously it was only one bear that was taking their elk, and now it's two because one of them, it's getting old and it's taken an apprentice and it's an unknown quantity. So the elves may think, well, maybe it's time to kill them both and just live without them. That's when you're going to have conflicts. And who knows, maybe the human community may get involved and say, hey, they were dropping off an elk for us every fortnight, so, we rely on that. Who are you to tell us that we can't have that woodland protector? You're certainly not providing that protection yourself, so there you've got a three-way conflict between elves, humans, and a werebear. And adventurers could just wander straight into the middle of that. So that makes an excellent background story for a setting that, in a few words, it establishes the tension and the nature of all of the NPC's reaction quite nicely. And it's as simple as that. You don't really need to go into great detail. You don't need to espouse all of the background, all the history and such. You don't have to have them bored to tears if they're sitting in a bar and some NPC is coming up to them and telling them this long, exhaustive story. Give the players the credit of understanding what's going on, or at least don't tell them everything that's going on. Let them figure it out for themselves, because that's part of the joy of playing a role-playing game. You have to play a role and get to understand the motivations of the other characters around you. And as a dungeon master, it's your job to let them uncover that. So, as tempting as it is to lay it all out on the table and then get to the conflict, sometimes it's really good to string it along and say, well, why are you guys so anti-elves at the moment? You seem to be quite nice with each other. Look, there's a half-elf over there, so clearly you've had pretty close relations before. What's the story? We don't talk about it. So, there you go. They are pretty cool. There is a slight chance that if there's a really big threat, the werebears will come out of the forest and form up into a hunt, and they will hunt alongside of whatever civilization they have aligned themselves with. So they can be a huge benefactor. But again, you don't really... It's like the giants in Game of Thrones. You don't really get along with these creatures. They're just too powerful, and they see you as more of an annoyance than anything. They're a tolerance, but they recognise that human beings are dangerous in numbers, and they have more numbers than the werebears ever have or ever will have. So, there you go. Werebears. I'll be following up soon enough with wereboars and weretigers to complete this little series. Thanks for listening, everyone.